based on all the cool artwork on here. So we're in the Sparkle team office, right?
Yes.
And
Cool.
who are you?
I'm Manuel Clement, and I'm a product designer on Sparkle.
Product designer. So what part did you play here?
Well,
What's your job?
I'm working on the user interface, so basically interaction design as well as branding visual design on the application.
Okay.
So a lot of the palettes I would work on, and I work on the actual XAML bits, and I'm trying to experiment with that new way of having a designer as part of the development team, checking in, getting code reviews and breaking the builds.
Now I don't know too much about Sparkle, but I've heard that it's one of the biggest .NET applications here at Microsoft, right?
I believe so. Maybe John can chime in here.
I don't think anybody's measured it yet.
But it's one of.
It is,
definitely is,
I don't know if it's the biggest, but it's
we had the
pretty big.
advantage. We started from scratch, and the thing is all managed, all C# from the ground zero, and most projects don't start that way, and so you're done with trying to rewrite something, and that just hasn't happened yet.
Right. Now who are you?
I'm John Gossman. I'm an architect on Sparkle.
And an architect is. What's your job
It's
like?
a fancy title for a programmer.
Okay.
It means I'm old.
Old and over the hill.
Yeah.
Oh, let's call him the architect. So what parts of Sparkle do we see your fingerprints on?
Well, the main thing that you're going to see is like basic features is the XAML loader, the XAML editor, things like that. But I've had my fingers in everything. I was like the second dev hired on the team. Manuel was here right from the beginning. Manuel was one of the first people on the whole team. He's the user.
Yep. And what was the original? Since you were on the original team, what was the original vision? What drove Microsoft to build this thing? Right.
So the fact is that with WinFX and the Windows Presentation Foundation, codename Avalon, there are new capabilities on the platform, such as rich graphics, having 3D, 2D, video, audio, and all that. Animation. All these kind of require tools, so it just makes sense that we build some tools so that creative people and designers can build things on top of this platform without pulling their hair out of their heads. So we built a tool that they would feel comfortable in, and we always thought of the designer first. Of course, developers are going to have fun with it, but in a way, it's a high-end design tool. We're trying to get the pro designer market to be excited about this.
So really, you can kind of see the essential thing of Sparkle sitting right here, because I can't draw, I have no artistic talent, I can't even see UI. When they change the buttons and they for new day, I'm like, I don't know, it's a different color. What's the difference? Manuel is just naturally he's artistic, blah blah blah.
We can tell that by all his artwork as well.
The whole point is that traditionally people, when they build an application, they build a UI, they get somebody like Manuel, and he draws it. And then a guy like me looks at it, and it can't even really see what it is, and I program it up, and then it doesn't come out, and Manuel complains about it, doesn't look right, and the customer is like, well, and then we go around, and eventually we get it somewhere near. And the whole point with Avalon is that you should be able to build these things in one system. You don't have to go from Photoshop to Win32.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm going to open an application that was built using Sparkle. If I resize the application, you can see that there's a little bit more going on than this, but just being a video. It's actually resizing. There's what we call a wrap panel, which is a container that gets this item to wrap like this. And then, if there's no more space, there's also a scroll bar. I have a scroll viewer control here.
Yep.
This text here is a real text box. It's not some kind of pink files that's there. I can change this from code, whatever I want. In the background, you have just a viewport 3D with a bunch of shapes in it. So it's just kind of a demonstration of technology rather than usefulness. These babies actually are radio buttons.
Wow.
Now there's a big blank here. People say, well, wait, radio buttons, you got a bullet in it. You have to have a bullet, otherwise it's not a radio button. When I look at radio button, I see a bunch of code that I can reuse. Radio buttons are good because they know how to exclude each other when one is selected. One goes up, the other ones go down. And you can play with this, and based on these states and events, you can trigger different timelines in Avalon. Okay. So this example here has no code whatsoever.
No code.
No code. All
So
Zam-
you haven't even gotten involved here yet, right?
no, he doesn't get to do all the fun stuff anymore.
No command line for you anymore.
So you haven't seen nothing. If you want to see something fun, you look at the screen again. And the fun part is that these actually are 3D. They're 3D objects that are inside the template of my radio buttons. And if I trigger one of the storyboards, I click on it. Whoops! It pops out.
I got a backup for that.
If I click on another one, they know how to say, you know what? You're not focused anymore, so you go away. You're not checked anymore, so you go away. And then because it's just retemplating existing controls, as I said, you reuse pieces of logic from Avalon, which are keyboard accelerators, keyboard shortcuts, accessibility features. So if I use my keyboards here, I can go check, 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 check. I can just navigate through the list in cloth-like fashion. And just, again, no code, just by triggering this animation back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, you can see that the objects dynamically go back and forth, okay? And when people think about a timeline, even designers, they think, well, there are hard-coded keyframes that can't be good, I can't code against these things. They need to just clear these ideas in their heads. We do have a timeline in our UI. If I open Sparkle, you see it.
So this is Sparkle.
This is Sparkle right here.
Okay.
The same project is open. You don't need to compile to see all this fancy stuff. It's just part of the thing. There's a timeline as well. But again, the fun thing about this timeline is actually it creates animations that...
Take me around here and
Yes.
just tell me what...
All right.
Give me a tour
Right.
around Sparkle here.
So the first time you open the tool, you can tell it's more of an artistic tool than kind of an application building tool. But so you have tools like selection, sub-selection, Bezier curve tools, and things like that. There's some 3D things going on here. I can show you that in a second. You have a project palette that shows you a bunch of what you have in your project. They're files, XAML files, C# files.
So that's sort of like Visual Studio has.
It is Visual Studio. That's
Yeah.
that is Visual
Build.
Studio.
That's not it, Visual Studio. But that's MS Build, which
Yep.
is the same build system that Visual Studio 2005 is using.
Okay.
So that's part of the key, and we can show
Yeah.
you later. You can actually open up Sparkle in Sparkle.
No, that's
Because-
trippy.
Well, so if I select one of these babies here,
Now you just demonstrated something. This is lets you build resolution independent UIs.
well, yeah, I mean, Avalon is resolution independent, DPI independent, vector based, accepts bitmaps as well, but it's vector based UI, and the artboard itself is you're editing an application that's DPI independent, but Sparkle itself as well is entirely built on top of Avalon, they're all vector based.
Wow.
Okay, so all the visuals that are in Sparkle, all these icons, the palettes themselves, all the controls were built using our own tool.
Right. So this tool was built using the tool.
Yes, it was.
Wow.
Ever since the first builds of Sparkle, we have poured XAML bits from our own XAML surface into the source itself, and that's how I go and I either do that or tweak by hand sometimes when I do just a little change. But it's kind of fun to have access to the bits, and they're never dead. You can always go back and change the visuals of it, and that's just beautiful.
And you don't need to talk to a dev to change the bits.
Yeah, in fact, generally I just kind of call them over and say, oh, like check
Now,
out
how
this
does
cool
the
thing.
devs feel about that?
Well,
You're used to having control, right? And in a dev team, right?
we're very happy with it. I mean, because Manuel can do things that none of us can do. So basically, when a dev builds one of these dialogues now, they just kind of like put in images and squares and things like that, and then like Manuel, and he goes and draws something, and and it checks it in. Everybody on the team has to do a code review before they do a check-in. So Manuel has to do a code review, but other than that, he's got exactly the same check-in rights as everybody else. And it's source code. XAML is source code just as much as C# is source code.
Yeah, that's a appearance palette. It's where people can change appearance properties. So things like background of objects and the border brush, foreground, all of this is actually a dynamic list. So that if you select any control, if I go and select that one of my radio buttons and change its template, I can go and go edit my template. Okay. Template is basically how visually that thing's going to be on the screen. That contains also animations, triggers, and things like that, states.
Right.
If I go and edit that, now my timeline now shows me only what's in here. So if I scrub, you can see that in real time is actually changing here. So I can preview in real time what's going to happen next. And the fun thing is that there's no keyframe at time 0. It means wherever you are, whatever height and width you are, animate from here to these hard-coded values, my keyframe.
Yeah.
That point is actually very important. This is really innovative, and you can stack as many timelines as you want on top of each other. You can tell them to morph inside each other, from each other, or just compose themselves. If it's different properties, they can animate different properties.
Right.
So.
Now, what can you programmatically change once he gives you an animation like this? How do you call this? How do you change it programmatically?
Well, with Avalon, everything the results of what he's going to produce here are going to go out as XAML. But XAML and C# are equal partners in the development process. So any object there is just an object in the C# code behind file too. So we can talk to that and do things. So a lot of times the key is we don't want to talk to that stuff. We want to make our code as abstract as possible. Go, the business logic type code or whatever that is, and then just put up the minimal tendrils. It's like, this is the model. Now go and make the view for that thing, and it's all up to Manuel at that point.
All right.
So here and there, just to show you that it's real. What
We
I have.
could go for 20 hours on this thing.
Yeah,
couldn't we?
what I hear. Yeah, there's like almost 4 years of work on this thing, so there's definitely a lot of features. If I switch to my XAML code, I can see that it's real. I have a transform group that translates, and I have gradient stops, and it's just exactly what the developer would have written if he followed the WinFS SDK.
Nobody can calculate the spline in their head to get the thing to look right.
Yeah.
So even a developer, maybe not as fluently as Manuel, is going to want a tool like this to edit these basic resources.
Well,
this is awesome stuff.
Well, hey, just like my project here is XAML and Avalon, all vector-based and all that, Sparkle's UI is also vector-based, so we could. We have a feature called the Workspace Zoom, zoomable workspace configuration. So basically it is something that's going to work very well on high DPI screens, where if you have too much space for your palettes and you have high enough DPI, you can zoom out. You can basically reduce the size of these palettes. You basically have a slider up there, and you can say, you know what, I really want these palettes to be pretty big there because my scene is smaller and I really have a few palettes on the screen. Let's say you're just drawing and you have color and tools. You can just zoom them up like crazy and have a childlike toy on the screen. Feel like a palette, and you're just having fun with it. It's really kind of fun.
Well, it's accessible too, because if my eyesight's not that great, I can still use this.
On the other hand as well, you can make it minuscule if you want to, and that what it is. I've seen this thing work on the newer screens, the 144 dpi screens. Most high-end laptops have them. A lot of workstations have them now, and not talking about the 200 plus dpi screens that are coming out in a couple of years. The thing looks gorgeous, even zoomed out all the way, small, tiny. It's still very readable because it's almost like print. So then the feature makes a lot of sense. And the fact that we have it in advance is a great.
Do that again.
He's apologizing for it because it's really cool. This is the feature that when you're doing the demo, at that point everybody goes ooh, and it's like you won. You can just stop the demo at that point.
Here we have things like, so we can draw things like rectangles, so pretty boring, but you can change real time the corner radius. It's actually radius X and radius Y properties in Avalon, and then the object can drag it around. Things we can do is change against the fill color here. So if I want to be a linear gradient brush, now I get a linear gradient brush. If I want to move around how this thing's oriented, I can use the brush transform tool, and this is going to give me a box that I can stretch around of the actual brush, not the object, but the brush, and they behave the same exact way as the object changes as well.